All right, we're live. We're back again, and for another episode of the SCMP Live Chat / Q&A. And yeah, man, me. I don't even think I ever introduced myself on this. I don't know if do I have to introduce myself. My name is Jon Hyon Ko. I don't. A lot of people say it properly, man. I'm very surprised, but you could, some people call me JHK. Some people call me Korean John. That's just I guess between some people that I know. But yeah, today, man, we got a good cast and crew, right? The Sucka crew. Hey, guess what? I'm wearing the
Oh,
Look at
shirt.
that.
I'm wearing the shirt.
yeah.
So you know how it is. But yeah, we got the Sucker crew. We got Nate Freeman. Nate Freeman's first time on the show, and Jeremy Brand, the boss man over there. He's been on the show many times. We're gonna get into combat sports, anything that's going on. I have an agenda, but you guys can control that with questions. So if you're watching live right now, get your questions in, get your comments in, and we're gonna kick it off, man. The first thing is something from last weekend, right? UFC Vegas 29, I believe. Everybody's gonna be talking about the Korean Zombie and all the performance bonuses, but I don't want to focus on that because everybody talked about that. The thing that I want to focus on is the Alexa Kammer fight, right, where he lost a split decision to Nikolai. I don't want to try to pronounce his last name, right? The big focus on this was the fence grabbing, right? From what I remember watching that fight, I believe there was like maybe four or five fence grabs, and the referee. Who's the referee, Jeremy, with the long like handlebar like beard? Ian, do
Beltran.
you know? Yeah, Beltran, right? He's a very good referee, right? He's very good. He does rarely make mistakes, but this time, man, he made 4 or 5 mistakes in a row in the same fight. Where like everybody knows by now that the referee goes back and explains to the fighters before the fight the rules, right? Or how he wants the fight to be conducted, right? And pretty much that's the warning to them, like don't grab the fence, don't kick them in the nuts, you know what I mean? Like don't poke them in the eyes, basic stuff. And then when you get into the fight, do you need another warning, Jeremy? Like, do you need another, like, is that, could you justify that to give them 4 warnings in a row?
This is a rule that makes me crazy, man. And it's not just fence grab, it's low blows, it's eye pokes, it's all of the above. As you said, the referee talks to them in the dressing room. He shouldn't have to say anything else inside the cage. If it happens once, you give him a warning. If it happens again, you take a point. Happens again, you deduct a couple points. Now, it's ridiculous when it doesn't happen because, as we said, it's in the rules. It's stated. It happened locally at a local event, BTC, which is an Ontario promotion. Actually happened in the main event of their fight card up here, BTC 10, happened in Vancouver. And Josh Kwiatkowski, a good friend of mine, was fighting in the main event, and it wasn't fence grabs, but he got kicked in the balls 4 times, and there was no point deduction. The referee had stopped the action twice, I believe. The first 2 times Josh didn't really react. He was like, "Oh," and then kept fighting because that's the kind of guy he is. But I think that if he had reacted, then it's a different story. The fighter shouldn't have to react is the thing. Like, you shouldn't have to, as a fighter, you shouldn't have to react to something in order for the referee to change his tune. Now, after the fight, I heard that his decision-making was that the low blows were non-intentional. Now, that should make no difference. And that comes into play in the same vein as fence grabs. Are they intentional? No, but everyone has a tendency as they're going down a cage to go and grab onto it as they're pulling. So whether or not it's justified in terms of I did it on purpose is irrelevant. The referee told you what to do. You know it's in the rules. So take a damn point away, man.
Yeah, and if you look at this article, beautiful article written by Nolan King, my guy Nolan King out there, MMA junkie, it says that right here it says that the light heavyweight fighter and his team will appeal his split decision defeat with the Nevada Athletic Commission in the near future. Iridium Sports Agency, shout out to them. Nate, Nevada, you appeal them. Is anything going to happen?
Absolutely nothing. Nothing at all. Like, it probably won't even make it to any of their hearings or anything. They're just gonna basically ignore it. Like they aren't gonna do anything about it. They're just gonna let it die off.
I think taking it's tough because things like this happen, split decisions. Now, is there anything that can really overturn it? I mean, yes, you can see these fence grabs, but unless the referee actually deems them fence grabs and does anything to them inside the cage, you can't really justify changing the decision. Does it suck? Of course it does, but will it affect anything? The Nevada State Athletic Commission is not going to overturn this.
The one thing that this reminds me of, it's a fence, right? So I was watching this interview. I watch interviews, but not MMA interviews. Like outside of MMA, I watch so many interviews. I recommend this YouTube channel called Soft White Underbelly. Have you ever seen that channel?
I haven't. No.
Oh my God,
I've not seen it. I've heard it, but yeah.
Oh man, this is like the craziest. Like it's not even interviews, it's just like people talking. It's just crazy, but it's not that show. It's another show from there's another channel called Asian Boss, and they interviewed this North Korean soldier that escaped North Korea, right? And during his story, he was explaining the electric fence and how to approach an electric fence, right? This was I never learned this, so maybe I'm educating people on this. But he said that most people when they check the electric fence, they try to check it like this, right? Like it's not like they try to check it. They try to touch it like this, right? But you shouldn't touch it like this. You know why? Because if it's an electric fence, if you touch it like this, your hands will automatically go like this, and you'll start, you'll latch onto the electric fence, and you can't get off of it, right? So he was saying like when you do go up to electric fence, what do? You go up to it and touch it like this. So if it is electric fence, your hands automatically go like this, but you're not touching the fence, right? So our fence is not electric, right? The cage is not electric, right? So if you do grab the fence like this, it's always intentional. There's no like unintentional fence grab, right? There's no such thing. Is there? Could you argue for an unintentional fence grab?
No,
Nate?
but as you're saying, it's a natural reaction, right?
Yeah.
So it's
But if it's electrical, that's what I'm saying. If there's electricity on, it's a natural reaction to grab it like this. But when you're just hanging on the fence, you don't like naturally just grab on the fence. You just,
no, I agree. But I think in your head, you're not thinking, "Fuck, I should grab the fence." Man, I think I need to grab that fence. I think it just sort of it happens.
Mm-hmm.
You're obviously not climbing the fence, but the same thing goes with your feet, right? Like when you push off the fence, or you're pushing your feet up against the fence, it's almost a natural thing to try to hook into it. It's there. Maybe get rid of the cage, man. Make it a solid wall.
Like the Joe Rogan proposal is just they fight on the basketball court.
Exactly.
But the thing about that is like let's look at it like this. Like there's certain promotions. Nate, I wanted to get your thoughts on this. Is like certain promotions they don't allow elbows, right? So if you're on top, right, on the ground, if you know the rules, you don't throw elbows because you know that that's part of the rules. It's like fence grabs. You know that you're not supposed to grab the fence, right? But you put your hand on it, you put your hand on it like this, so you know because you know the rules. So Nate, could you justify a fence grab?
I mean, no. Like it's something that obviously, if you're going down, I think of and it's probably one of the most infamous instances of a fence grab. It quite possibly kept the title in Jose Aldo's hands when he did that to Chad Mendez. Yes. I think that's a good example because he held the fence and then shortly after he landed that big knee that knocked Mendez out cold. Like it's obviously something that is advantageous and there's a reason why it's illegal. I just don't imagine. I don't know. I've never fought. So I don't know if that's something that I'd particularly be thinking about, but I would think that they would be trained well enough to know not to grab the fence during training. And I think they would it would be muscle memory to not grab it by the time they come to the fight.
With that Chad Mendez, Jose Aldo fight, that's a perfect example, right? Where
100%.
The course of that fight was completely altered by intentional fence grab, right? So like Jose Aldo kneed him, knocked him out. He defends his title successfully. If you're an athletic commission and they appeal that, Jeremy, do you give Chad Mendes another immediate title shot and call that a no contest?
You
What would be
very
the
well, yeah,
title?
you very well could. I'm sure because it was, as you say, blatant and intentional. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that because you naturally grab onto a fence that you shouldn't have a point deducted. Because, like I said, no matter what, a guy grabs the fence, intentional or not, it should be a point deducted. Even if it's unintentional, it should be a point deducted after that warning. The referee went into the dressing room, told you the rules. You know the rules when you're training for the 3, 4, 5 months leading up to this fight, whatever the fight camp is. You know the rules. Likely, a lot of these gyms, these guys aren't even training in cages, right? They're training up against the wall. But still, if you're training inside a cage, then you know not to grab the cage. And regardless of whether it's intentional or not, I don't care who says point deduction shouldn't happen, but they need to happen if the rules are broken. Or like in Pride or anything like that, or even in one, give a guy a yellow card or a red, whatever you want. You know what I mean? Like, I have no problems with those kind of things.
Yeah, and you know, Thunder Fist McBeefcake, what a name.
Beauty name.
Yeah. he brings up a good point, right? It's, you know, unlike boxing, it's shorter 3 or 5 round fights would impact it too much by point deductions, right? And then that goes into the judging, right? Why is the judging the same as boxing? And it's a rabbit hole, a complete rabbit hole of thoughts and opinions and, you know, and possible solutions. So is there a solution to it? Like, I understand you give them one warning, right? I could understand that a referee gives them one warning and then says, okay, after the warning, you tell them like, hey, you do anything else beyond this point, fighter, you do anything else, we're gonna take a point. I'm gonna take a point from you, and it could like you could tell them it could cost you the fight.
It
right?
could, yeah, for sure. Or you can continuously dock points. You know what I mean? Who gives a shit? Anytime they do something, you take away a point. Or like George St. Pierre and Joe Rogan like to say, forget the rounds. You have a time and you fight for that allotted time. And maybe even go back to the Pride rules where you have 1 10-minute round and then a 5-minute round, because that 10-minute round was like nothing else, man. These guys are fighting for 10 minutes straight and it's insane. Or like back at early UFC days, UFC 1, UFC 2, whatever. I mean, guys are fighting on for hours at a time, hour and a half for one fight. It's insane. But if we really want to see who the true winner is in there, then yeah, you could get rid of the timed rounds. But with athletic commissions, that shit's never going to happen.
Yeah, I also think not only do they lose the point, they need to be, once they get the point taken, they need to be put on the ground, whether that's like in guard or however the takedown would have ended up. I think that they also need to lose the position and have given up the takedown, because
that's an interesting
that's what fence grabs are for, to avoid being taken to the ground. I can't imagine maybe in the clinch trying to, you know, keep an underhook or something like that. But yeah, I think you need to lose the position on top of losing a point.
Oh yeah, it rarely ever happens though. You know what I mean? Like even with, yeah, like when they're in the clinch, you know what I mean? Something happens like a nut shot. The referee separates them, maybe takes a point, and then they start back up in the middle. I never understood why is that part of the rules? Is that what the rules say? Like if you get deducted a point that you get to stay, you get to restart on the feet. That's somewhat advantageous to somebody that was pressed against the cage, right, Jeremy?
Yeah, for sure it is. I mean, I understand the point where two guys are on the ground and say a guy is in the top half guard and he's elbowing a guy in the head and then he elbows him in the back of the head. The fight continues. Stand them back up. Mm-hmm. Makes complete sense, because the guy who got elbowed in the back of the head was in a disadvantageous position. Mm-hmm. So put them in to an even playing field after an illegal shot has been made, whether a point is taken away or not. But I actually have never thought of it that way, Nate. I have never thought of, if you're up against the cage and you're going for a takedown and a guy grabs the fence and stops it, even with the point, to put them down onto the ground where the takedown would have happened. I actually really like that.
Or I guess you just put him into that position where he had the legs locked in against the fence and then start him from there. So it gives him an opportunity maybe to defend the takedown, right? If it was just like at the start of the takedown, I guess it all depends on like where at what point was the takedown. Did he lift him in the air? You know, like it's something that like they really do need to go back
that
and
fight. Jose was on his way down, right? Like he was stumbling all across the cage.
Yeah, his legs were up in the air, right?
Exactly.
Like his legs were way up in the air, and then he just got back. That fence grab was lovely.
The knockout happened instantaneously after that. Like as he turned, boom, knee to the head.
Yeah, maybe that was knockout without the fence grab.
No.
Yeah, that's the thing. And in the round I think it was right at the end of the round too, right? Like 1
very
second.
Close,
yeah, it was very close, right? So because I remember he knocked him out, jumped. I think that was in Brazil too. He jumped out the cage and he was with his family and friends or whatever. So yeah, it's just, man, Alexa cameraman, I feel bad for the guy. You know what I mean? Because I feel like he did win the fight, and even maybe without the fence grabs, right? Because the other guy was just basically holding him against the fence for the most of the time, right?
I do too, because I had him in my last one standing competition. Man.
Yeah, so Nevada, man, the thing is, Nevada, they don't ever do anything. So hopefully something, I don't know what it's gonna take for them to change their ways and kind of, look out for the fighters more than they look out for anybody else. But it's a government job. They don't care about people, right? They don't care about their citizens. So they're not going to really do anything for them, which sucks. I think the UFC should start doing something, right? If the UFC starts doing something, I think Nevada will, maybe support that, but maybe not. Who knows, right? The next thing is, man, this whole like Anthony Smith, Jon Jones thing, right? So Anthony Smith comes out, and I wanted to put this on the screen. He comes out and on the, what is it right here? It says bjpen.com, Cole Shelton, give him credit for this. So Anthony Smith, he goes on the Jenna Ben show, right? And here's the quote: "I never even told anyone John failed every drug test the entire week leading up to our fight. Every single drug test. I never brought it up one time in any interview, in any media thing, nothing. The commission called me every day to let me know he was still failing his drug test. I never said anything. I let it be because I was just focused on myself and always believed that if you just focus on yourself, you're going to be that much more successful," right? And very optimistic words of wisdom from Anthony Smith. But this blows my mind, Jeremy. Like, how do you this guy, if this is true, right? How does Jon Jones fail every drug test? The commission is calling Anthony Smith, telling him he's failing every drug test, and the fight still continues. Like, where in the rule book is that?
Dude, it's insane. And as much as I want to believe him, it's hard to, because like we were just talking about, fence grabs, you're saying get the UFC involved maybe, but you know what? Everything comes down to these athletic commissions. So if the commission is telling him that he failed drug tests, the commission is in charge of licensing these fights and letting these fighters fight. It's not that so the UFC match makes the fights. Then the UFC puts those matches to the commission where the fights are going to happen and has to get them accepted by the commission before the fights actually happen. Now, obviously, within the UFC, these all happen because the guys are ranked fairly close to each other. Obviously, local fights and whatnot, the commissions will turn down fights because it's a complete mismatch. And that does not happen within the UFC inside the octagon because they're in the UFC. But at the end of the day, the athletic commission chooses whether a fight happens or whether a fight doesn't happen. Just like at the weigh-ins, if a guy is overweight, the commission says, you know what, this guy's way too far overweight. We can redo this at a catch weight, or the fight does not happen. Now, this guy has failed multiple drug tests leading up to the fight. I don't understand how they made it happen other than the fact that they talked to Dana White and maybe he slid the commission some money or something. But like, it makes zero sense to me that this actually happened and why it's coming out now. Like, I understand Anthony Smith thought he was going to win the light heavyweight championship, but at the end of the day, did he really want to fight a guy who is failing multiple drug tests every single day of the week kind of thing? Makes no sense.
As the kids say, it's a little sus. I kind of don't believe it because, I mean, there's sort of a precedence here with Jon Jones failing a drug test during fight week with the Alexander Gustafsson fight, their second fight, with those picograms that were just the talk of the town for that fight week. They moved the entire card from Nevada to California. So I don't know why they wouldn't do that again if they knew that, or I just feel like there's a precedent there as to Jon Jones has failed a pre-fight drug test, and there have been actions taken previously to that. So I'm just sort of, I guess, confused by that.
Yeah, it also adds to the controversy in the fight, right? Where Jon Jones landed an illegal knee, I believe, in round 4, and he was deducted 2 points for that. And Anthony Smith, he continued fighting, right? Where he could have just took the belt, like, a la Aljamain Sterling, right? But he didn't.
Yeah.
He fought on. So props to Anthony Smith. If this is all true, right? If this whole thing is true, props to him for taking the fight with multiple drug test failures. Props to him for not taking the easy way of winning the title, which I think most fighters, I'm not saying most fighters, but there's some percentage of fighters that would have just took the win like Aljo did, right? They would have took the win, took the belt. Because think about it, a win over Jon Jones or taking the belt from Jon Jones compared to taking the belt from Peter Yan. Peter Yan's a great fighter, but Jon Jones, whole nother level, right? Like you'd
be Matt Hamill, man.
Yeah. Oh, I forgot. Sorry, Matt Hamill. Shout out to Matt Hamill. Hopefully, he doesn't get offended and attack me somewhere in the street. But yeah, Jon Jones, right? And on top of that, think about the financial benefits of being the champion and getting an immediate rematch against Jon Jones. So you get another crack at Jon Jones. Like there was so much going on.
And the money for that fight.
Exactly. You know what I mean? Like, why would you? The thing is, like, one thing that I don't like about certain like when people reveal information is like something like pivotal like this. Why did they hold on to that for so long? Right? Why are you revealing it now? Like, why is Anthony Smith out there talking about this now?
And it has nothing to do with anything at this point. Do you know what I mean? Like zero, like absolutely nothing to do with anything right now. Jon Jones is not even fighting at light heavyweight anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's like they're not even tied in together. And I know Anthony Smith has some beef with Jon Jones because Jon Jones did say some like out of pocket shit about like when that intruder entered his house and he had to fight the intruder and everything. Jon Jones out of pocket about that, right? Because that's your family. You know, like your family was in danger, right? He should understand that, right? A little bit, but it is what it is. I know Smith probably has some like beef with that. Maybe that's just lingering still. Who knows? But Jon Jones, here we go. We got the response on Twitter. Jon Jones' Twitter fingers, right? The week of our fight, Jon failed every drug test. Whatever helps you sleep at night, buddy. So that doesn't reveal too much to us, right? That doesn't say much to us about like what really happened in the fight. But I mean, not in the fight, but in the lead up to the fight. But we'll see, man. And this fight happened in Nevada too, in Las Vegas. And if it's true, Las Vegas must be the most corrupt commission in all of sports. I'm just saying, allegations, allegedly, right? But
that's exactly what it is. Allegations.
Yeah, it's allegations, right? But it's stirring the pot. It's keeping Anthony Smith in the headlines, even though he probably doesn't really need to, right? He's a guy I feel like a lot of people respect.
Super chill.
Like, yeah, super chill, like very articulate when he's on the broadcast, like breaking down fights. He's actually one of the guys that I like to see on the desk, because his journey through the sport, if you watched it, I believe like he was fighting in Strikeforce, man, like in those days. Am I right? Is that the same guy? I think so.
I believe he was. Yeah.
Yeah, he like whenever a guy comes from the Strikeforce days. Is it Strike? He was in Bellator in the
he was in Strikeforce. He was in Bellator. He fought for the UFC once and then was released and then went to Bellator and then back to the UFC. Like,
Yeah, I
dude,
remember
he's
his
had quite the
second.
career. He's been fighting pro since 2008.
Yeah, he's one of the guys still from that generation
Oh,
fighting.
yeah.
You know what I mean? Like even Dan Henderson hasn't survived, right? But Anthony Smith's much younger than Dan Henderson. But yeah, he's one of those guys that been around for many promotions, seen a lot, right? So he has a lot to add to whatever broadcast. But this is just very weird why he would do this. Maybe we're gonna hear more from Anthony Smith. I think he does have a podcast of his own or some kind of show that he does. Hopefully, hopefully we could get some clarity, right, from maybe Nevada. You see, the thing is, Nevada never says anything about anything, so it's just
They used to.
they used to.
Like, yeah, a long time ago. I forget what the name of the commissioner was. Keith. Forget his name.
Keith Jardine. Let's just say
no, but they used to. Everything was out in the open back in the day. Keith Kaiser was his name. He was the head of the athletic commission back when I first started MMA Sucka, and they would send out emails about medical suspensions. They would send out emails about how much the fighters were paid. They would send out everything was out in the open. If you wanted to be a part of their mailing list, you literally just hit them up and they would send you the email so that you could post that stuff on your website. Now, for the last 10 years, I'd say, maybe a little less, it's been completely shut and kiboshed and in the dark.
Yeah, which is shitty. Now, Nate, I wanted to ask you about Jon Jones, right? In this Anthony Smith situation. Jon Jones, let's say he is still pulsating, right? Do you let him still fight? Like, do you feel like pulsating is okay? Or is it, if there's even like a little drop of a little tidbit of something, you should not be able to fight?
Well, I don't know. I feel like if he's pulsating, that's so strange.
Yeah.
But if he has remnants of it in his system that shows that he took it at some point, I don't know how often he gets tested. I'm sure that since he's failed previously, that USADA tests him pretty regularly. And I would think that they would have caught him before you find that, it's left his system already. I don't know the ins and outs of how foreign substances like that work, but I would think that USADA checks him specifically enough to where they should have found that out before it had gone through and there were just trace amounts of it.
With USADA, right? USADA is separate from the athletic commission and it's separate from the UFC, right? So these are three different entities working in cahoots, right? I don't want to say cahoots in a negative way, but that's what they're doing, right? And Nowitzki, he works for USADA, I believe, right? Or does he work for the UFC?
No, he works for USADA.
He's the
USADA. He's the head of USADA, I believe.
Okay, he's the head of USADA, which works closely with the UFC, right?
Yes.
So
other sports as well, right? Like he's
definitely
the guy who broke MLB scandal and all that kind of stuff as well.
Balco, right? Balco.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. So this guy, his track record, he knows what he's doing. Okay, and when you look at it, have you noticed that USADA has been very quiet like the last year or so? They haven't put fighters on blast as quickly, because remember before it was like you were guilty until proven innocent.
Oh yeah.
But now they're doing a better job of keeping that under wraps and then releasing it once they get suspended, once the investigation is over. I think they're doing a good job, Jeremy. Don't you think?
I do. And have you noticed that not a lot has happened with fighters recently since they've legalized marijuana as well? I mean, a lot of guys were getting busted for that. Yeah. But since that has become a non-banned substance, seems like we're not hearing about a lot of failed drug tests anymore. Mm-hmm. It's very interesting. I think USADA is doing a great job. I know again, bringing up George St. Pierre, this guy was a huge advocate, not just for USADA, but for WADA, which was an independent drug testing company that he wanted to hire himself to start drug testing the guys that he was fighting. And the UFC wanted nothing to do with it at that point. But there are fighters out there who are very big on getting these guys tested, and I think it needs to be done. Other than the fact that maybe if they're all on drugs, then it doesn't really matter.
And according to Nate Diaz, they are.
Well, yeah. I mean, he's going to say anything.
Yeah, Nate Diaz is just saying things to say things, right? Just
that guy's relevant no matter what, though, right?
Yeah.
Nate Diaz lost his fight, and his stock rose way higher than Leon Edwards did.
Yeah, let's transition to that. You know what I mean? Nate Diaz, he puts out a tweet. It's not even like directed. It's like indirected or indirectly directed at, Kamaru Usman, but he doesn't tag him. He doesn't say his name. And
just the area code.
Yeah, just he didn't this is what he tweeted, right? So let's put this tweet on the screen. All right, so we got it right here. His tweet is, "Who this guy fighting next? Someone he already KO'd." So you see, like, this could be anybody, right? This could be anybody, but guess who responds? Kamaru Usman responds to, "I see you 209. If you really want this 187, then call your boy Hunter." So Hunter, I believe, is the lawyer, like one of the head lawyers of the UFC. I guess he negotiates the contracts, and Nate is smart, man. Nate, he lost his last fight, and Jeremy mentioned that his stock rose, and it did rise. And the only way he's going to be able to get a fight that's a title fight is to get Kamaru Usman to push the UFC to want Nate to fight for the title, right? Because right now, public sentiment is Nate is not in line for the title. He's probably like number 10 in line for the title, or 15 or 20, yeah. Right? If that, right? Because his last fight that he won was against Anthony Pettis, who is a lightweight. And then now he's not even competing with the UFC. He's over there at PFL, right? And then before that, he beat Conor McGregor. So the last two guys he defeated are not even welterweights. But this shows you how relevant Nate Diaz is, because his last two wins in the last like 5 years are what, lightweights, but he's trying to get a welterweight title shot, right? So, my opinion is, like, Nate Diaz should never get a title shot ever. You know what I mean? Like, he should just go fight money fights. The title shot should be for guys that deserve the title, right? But Kamaru Usman, he wants it, man. He wants the money fights, right? Because Nate gave some facts, right? He KO'd Covington. He KO'd Masvidal. He KO'd Burns. He already beat Leon, right? He's beaten pretty much all the guys that are at the top, except for like Wonder Boy. So this fight coming up, Wonder Boy versus Burns, it's a very pivotal fight. But going back to Kamaru, right? Nate, do you think Kamaru should be chasing the money fights, or do you feel like you rather see him fight the guys that are at the top of the division and defend and go after like the records?
Well, look, he's the champ, so the champs need to fight the top contenders. I think Kamaru and any champion should be able to get a money fight every now and then, and he got that with Masvidal, just his last fight. So I think we need to pump the brakes on, especially with Diaz. I think that he's, not in the top 10 of the welterweight division. I see somebody like Sean Brady even beating him at welterweight. But I think, if Diaz were to get a couple of wins and keep making money and his stock continues to rise, as it does after every single fight that he has, then sure, book it. But I think both of them need to have at least a couple fights between now and then.
Yeah, with what is it, Kamaru, man? I feel like he is one of the more dominant champions at this moment during this generation of champions, and getting better as he fights as the champion. So, but he should fight the next contender, right? He should fight
100%.
Leon, right? Even though it's a rematch, but they fought years ago, right?
And Leon's improved exponentially.
Exactly, right? But the thing is, Leon didn't help himself any by getting rocked in the 5th round, right? Then
it almost just proves that Kamaru is gonna be that much better than him.
Exactly, because how many guys has Nate rocked in his career? That wasn't kind of, at the tail end of their career, right? There's maybe McGregor. He rocked McGregor, right? But McGregor was gassed out of his mind, right? And shooting for takedowns, which he never does. And
Gray Maynard was right outside of his, he was a few fights removed from his 2 fights with his 2 title fights with Frankie. He TKO'd him. But yeah, other than people sort of out of their prime and those two, yeah.
Yeah, and he beat up Michael Johnson, right? I think that was more psychological than anything. Like he got in his head. He beat Cowboy, you know what I mean? But those are all like submissions. His submissions were like Jim Miller, Cowboy he beat by decision, right? And Gomi was by submission also. But that's like his last 5 or 6 wins, and which is peppered with a bunch of losses, right? Even a TKO loss.
Yeah.
Thompson.
I honestly don't even know if Nate knew that he had rocked Leon as bad as he did. Like, I know he knew he tagged him, but he waited so long to follow up. He pointed, he laughed. I know it was the end of the fight and that he was like just excited that he hit. I think that was what it was. He was almost overly excited that he had caught him, because if he knew that he rocked him that bad, I think he would have followed up a little more. And I want to backtrack quickly a little bit here, because I said Jeff Nowitzki was the head of USADA. I was wrong, and I noticed a comment that he isn't. He works alongside USADA, so I Googled it. And Jeff Nowitzki is actually the current senior vice president of athletic health and performance for the UFC.
Wow, so, we're completely off on that,
exactly.
Right? Like spreading, yeah. we're like Alex Jones, right? We're like just spreading misinformation.
But if I want to talk about Nate Diaz and whether he should get a title shot or not, I mean, at the end of the day, the Diaz brothers' names are so relevant that I think you put them in against anybody and no one really complains. Like, if Nate Diaz got this fight against Kamaru Usman, I'm sure everybody would watch. Even some of the fighters, other than maybe Colby or Leon, would complain. Like, no one's going to complain about that if Nate actually gets this fight. That's just like if Nick Diaz comes back and he goes straight into a title shot after not fighting for eons, it seems. People are just going to be stoked that a Diaz brother is back inside the octagon.
Yeah, they are. And of course you're going to watch. I'm going to watch. Do I condone it? No, but
no.
Of course I want to watch Kamaru fight Nate, and I want to see that annihilation happen. It kind of reminds me of the movie 300.
Yeah. Here's the thing. At the end of the day, all of us and the real fans out there want fights to happen and want them to be by the rankings. But we know that they don't mean anything. We know that money fights are what sell, and we know that money fights are what bring the casual fan in. And that's what this sport needs, is more and more casual fans, as much as we hate it. You know what I mean?
The thing is, like, I think like that money fight situation, that thing we got going on right now, is I think it's moving over to boxing more.
100% it is, for sure.
And James Lynch, he's always telling me his theory on why Nate is fighting and why Conor, they continue to fight, because they want to get out of their contracts. They want to leave the UFC, because all the money fights, the big money fights, right? 5, 6, 10, 15, $20 million fights are in boxing, because they have that star power in boxing. And that's why I think the UFC should take advantage of that. And Dana White should take advantage of that. Maybe he is in the works. The Zuffa of boxing has been talked about for years and years and years. Why do they not just put that together and then move Nate over to the boxing arena and then do co-promotions and make buku bucks? Why would you want these guys to, like try to fight out their contract? Why don't you just continue their contract over at Zuffa Boxing?
100%. Dana, yeah, it totally makes sense. And Dana is making Oompa Loompa blah 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 worth of money, but the fighters are not. That's the thing, right? So even if they did do Zuffa Boxing, are they still going to pay the fighters? You know what I mean? Like, so long as Dana White is at the helm, I don't see these fighters making a hell of a lot more than what they're already making. Like, that's the problem. Unless you're the upper echelon and the cream of the crop, you're not you're not making a hell of a lot of money. And that's why a lot of these guys that didn't win titles with the UFC moved on to Bellator or PFL or won championship wherever they want. Like some of these guys chose to leave. You know what I mean? Like they did not want to stay with the UFC. And that tells you something right there.
Yeah, I just wonder how many fights Nate has left in his contract. Because remember when Jorge signed his deal, his newest deal, when he took that late notice fight against Kamaru on Fight Island, right, for the title.
Yeah.
And I believe that was like a 6-fight deal or something like that. 6 or 8 fight deal. You remember Anderson Silva had that deal where he signed like 8 fights.
Yeah.
And then he fought out his contract, right? But it took him a long time, right? Because 8 fights in MMA, 8 fights is a lot of fights, right, for one promotion.
Well, and I know some of these guys retire with fights still on their contract, and then they can't do anything. Like, look at Brendan Schaub, still has a fight left on his contract, I think, and he couldn't go out there and do a celebrity boxing match even if he wanted to. You know what I mean? Like, it makes no sense the way these things work. But the UFC is smart, man. The UFC is smart. Now, do we want to see Nate Diaz get in the boxing ring with a guy like Jake Paul?
I think that would be one of the biggest fights in boxing, right? Like,
for sure.
Boxing is taken over not by real boxers. It's been taken over by MMA fighters going to boxing and by these celebrities boxing, right? And
hell, that
Jake Paul,
YouTube versus TikTokers event, I mean, whether people illegally streamed it or not, had millions and millions and millions of viewers, which is more than any MMA event will get.
Really, I didn't even I heard about the TikTok YouTube thing, but I didn't watch it, and I have no idea who any of those people are.
I have no idea either. But I listened to this podcast called Mom's Basement, and it's with this guy named FaZe Banks, who's like this giant dude in the YouTube TikTok world or whatever, from like the Hype House and all those kind of things, which I had no clue what it was until I listened to this podcast. It popped up on my Spotify, and it's ridiculous how big even just these social media fights are. It's insane to hear. I mean, they could be blowing the numbers out of proportion. Obviously not what people are paying for, because it was like a $50 pay-per-view for YouTube versus TikTokers, which who the hell is going to pay for that? But if you went through, supposedly, from what these guys said, and if you went through Twitch or TikTok or YouTube, people were live streaming it on there illegally, and they couldn't do anything about it because they're not partnered with those sites. So YouTube and TikTok and Twitch couldn't take it down because there was no partnership. So these guys are making a killing with all the views that they're getting. And supposedly each of them had like million. And also the boxers, as this guy's saying up on the screen, no one got paid less than $1 million. Yeah, some of FaZe Clan were fighting. The main event fighters, Austin McBroom, I think his name was, against Bryce Hall. These guys got paid $6 million each to fight. And they're YouTubers and TikTokers.
Nate, you know, like with YouTubers and TikTokers, right? You look like a TikToker. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but I'm just.
I do not have TikTok. I watch a decent amount of YouTube videos, but I do not have TikTok.
Yeah, I don't have TikTok either, right? Now with TikTok and YouTube, right? These guys, these YouTubers, these TikTokers, they have millions and millions of followers each. Not like one of them has millions of, so they could promote their fights weeks, months ahead, right, on their platforms, and then that just helps their pay-per-view numbers, and that's why these guys are getting paid 1.3 million or 1 million or 5 million or 6 million or whatever. Like, I say, let them do their thing, man. We don't have to watch it. You know what I mean? Like, we don't have to focus on it. Like, we don't even have to tie it together. But if an MMA fighter can get in there against a YouTuber or a TikToker, Nate, you got to let them do it, right? You got to let that beat down happen.
Yeah, I mean, look, I
can't even get it out.
I'm confused as to how this is all happening.
It's Black Mirror, man. Black Mirror. That's what it is.
But I mean, obviously now that it's happening, there's so many new eyeballs to the sport of boxing. Mm-hmm. That, you know, it's revitalized the sport for better or worse. But I don't even know. Like,
I'm gonna tell you. I'm gonna tell you something else here. Let me just hop on quickly. So Saturday night there were so many different fights. I didn't watch this YouTuber versus TikTok thing, but what I did see was that no one else was covering it. So Sunday morning I woke up and I saw, hell, there were no results posts. There were nothing. Saturday night we had the UFC. Saturday night we had Anderson Silva fight. Sunday morning, there were no results posts for this YouTube versus TikTokers thing. What did I do? I threw together a results post for MMA Sucka. By Monday morning, it had 6,000 views. What's that tell you? People want to know who's winning these fights, and they're not even fighters.
Yeah. It's like I said, the platform, the social media platforms that these guys possess, it's everything for them. You know what I mean? Like if you have like there's a podcast that I watch called Genius Brain. He started his channel like back in the day, right? When you could make like $100,000 a month on ad revenue on YouTube, right? But and he probably made a lot of money back then, but now it's not like that anymore. But he was talking about like, man, I have 1.4 million subscribers. Like I could promote a fight. If you want me to box a TikToker, I could go out there and box a TikToker because I have the 1.4 million subscribers. I'll do a show and document my training camp if there is one and promote the hell out of it, right? That's one thing that these fighters don't have. They don't have that, but they're slowly starting to build their YouTube. They're slowly starting to build their, even like, you know, Apollo Costa, you know what I mean? He has like hundreds of thousands of subscribers on his YouTube channel, right? And his YouTube channel gets crazy views. Look at Israel. Israel started his own YouTube channel, crazy views, has his brother, you know, running it and everything, gave his brother a job, right? And, you know, that could be very successful because he's so popular and, you know, his social media is so big. Man, it's just, yeah.
I was going to say, I also want to point out that a lot of this ties back to Kimbo Slice. And back when he did his backyard fights, those were getting millions and millions and millions of YouTube views. Just seeing these basically random people just duke it out in someone's backyard. And that's where Jorge Masvidal first got famous. And I mean, he's just sort of carried that fame throughout his UFC career. And obviously the Ben Askren KO helped, but that I think is sort of the catalyst in terms of YouTube fights that sort of just has not been mentioned.
I wonder what's going to be the new YouTube, right? Because YouTube, you know, just like MySpace and, you know, like I know Vimeo's out there and all that stuff, but there's got to be something that's going to come soon, like beyond YouTube, right? Like I just wonder what that is. I wish I knew, then I could just invest in it, but you know, I have no idea, right? So is it that blockchain stuff, right? Is it that NFTs? Is that the new thing that we should hop on right now? I don't know, man, because everybody's telling me to.
I'm seeing these promotions like PFL and XFC and stuff. They're like, don't forget to like after the main event, you can have Claressa Shields' MMA debut as an NFT. I'm like, I do not understand what it is, but obviously it's something that is being talked about and something that people make money off of, just having someone's like content. I truly don't understand what it is, but I just remember, I know PFL sold Claressa Shields' MMA debut, and I know XFC did something with their last event for it. So I was just...
Francis Ngannou was actually the first MMA fighter to have an NFT. I know Markel Martin, his manager at CAA, they created a beautiful... So basically what it is a JPEG or an image on your computer that you get to download and you get to keep. But there's only so many of them. They're not like, it's a piece of art that you have that's digital. So a lot of artists and painters and stuff like that are coming out with NFTs to build a brand as well. And it's cool that the MMA scene is coming aboard this, but it's I don't know how well it's going to do, if I'm being honest with you. I don't think it's huge for the MMA game. Could be, But yeah, I don't know.
Well, I've heard, like, I know somebody that has bought NFTs, and he's a he's not an MMA fan. He's like NBA, NFL, NHL, right? And he's bought some online. Like, I heard he was telling me some of those NFTs packets or whatever you call it, they're worth like millions of dollars, right? Like, I don't understand how that's happening. Like,
Logan Paul did Pokemon. He unboxed Pokemon cards, and literally he was unboxing them and sold the Pokemon cards that he unboxed to his viewers on his YouTube page for millions and millions of dollars.
Yeah.
But they didn't get the physical copy of the card. They got an NFT of it.
I don't even know,
I mean,
man.
Logan Paul still has that card. He walked out to the Mayweather.
Exactly. For sure he did. But the interesting thing about it is I could literally screen capture that same thing and have the same image. So it's just you know what I mean? Like, these NFTs, you can see them on your screen. Like, Francis Ngannou's was posted. You could see what the NFT was on his Instagram page. You could screenshot it with your phone and have the same NFT that the person purchased, but it's not legit. So you couldn't trade it or do anything like that. So it's basically like a new stock market, right?
Yeah, it
so
is.
like, I own some cryptocurrency. NFTs are owned by Ethereum, which is a cryptocurrency. Well, not owned, but that's what you use to trade it. What's going on, Nick?
Right. Hey guys, apologies for gate crashing.
No, it's all good, man. It's all good. Yeah, so
lean over here.
Look at that background.
yeah, I'm gonna switch it up a little bit, the background, and so here we go. There we go.
Beautiful.
Perfect, right? Beautiful, right? We got it all in there. All right, so now you know, as we go further, if you guys got some questions, if you're watching right now live, if you've got some questions, put it in the chat. Nick will take care of all of that stuff. The next thing that I wanted to get into is Anderson Silva. You know, Jeremy got to interview Anderson Silva, and very jealous of that because I've never done it. And but it looks like Anderson Silva is not going away anytime soon. He went in there and outpointed Julio Cesar Chavez. Did the Anderson Silva? He did it. He did everything what we expected, just in the boxing ring. Man, now Anderson Silva, I feel like he could be the unexpected superstar in his like second leg of his career in boxing. Do you think that's could be a possibility? Like, age is not going to be a factor for him, Jeremy?
Tough to say, man. Tough to say. It was cool to interview him for sure, and I like sort of where he's at in his career. We didn't see him as Anderson Silva the fighter. We saw him as Anderson Silva the human, and I put out an article about that. But he can go on and do whatever he wants now. He's outside of the UFC. He can box, he can kickbox, he can do jiu-jitsu, he can do whatever he pleases. And this fight just proved that he's a hell of a boxer. He didn't get in there with a YouTuber. He didn't get in there with a scrub. He got in there with a legit fighter who, like, Canelo couldn't put away. I mean, it was a great performance by Anderson Silva. I don't understand how the hell it was a split decision, other than the fact that it was in Mexico, because he dominated almost every round. I think I had Cesar Chavez Jr. winning 2 of them, maybe even 1. But Anderson Silva could go in there and do really well inside the boxing ring for sure, if that's what he chooses to do next.
Date. Anderson Silva's next fight, you have a selection, right? You got Vitor Belfort, Jake Paul, Oscar De La Hoya, or who's the other guy that called out Anderson? Rashad Evans. He's coming out of retirement. It looks like he's going to be boxing.
Just before we hopped on, saw that he was coming out of retirement and going into boxing, which is, I mean, obviously the thing to do for all these former UFC fighters now. I saw where Logan tweeted out that he wanted Roy Jones Jr. and Anderson on his undercard with his Woodley fight. I know that the prime of that discussion has long come and gone, but I'm sure that they'd be willing to duke it out. I think that fight makes sense to just sort of showcase once again Anderson Silva's skills. and then with the winner, they would get Logan Paul or Jake Paul. I mean, I just really want to see, especially like if Roy Jones Jr. were to beat Anderson and have that build as the winner fights Jake Paul, Roy Jones Jr. just knocking the crap out of Jake Paul. But yeah, I still, I don't know if it's just the nostalgia in me, but I think that I want to see Roy Jones Jr. and Anderson Silva the most out of all of those.
Yeah, it is the fight that we should put together while we can, right? Roy Jones Jr. did have that warm-up fight with Mike Tyson, right? If you could call it that.
Exhibition, right?
Yeah, exhibition. And Anderson Silva went in there and actually did a pro fight and did really well. I feel like there's ready. Yeah, fantastic. I think that they should put that fight together, man. And I love it. I love that Anderson Silva is going to get the opportunity to fight Roy Jones Jr. And we saw Roy Jones Jr. He still has some hand speed, right? He still can throw them hammers. So Anderson Silva too, man. And it's kind of like Anderson Silva mirrors a lot of the things that Roy Jones has done in the past. So it's going to be funny to see them do that to each other, which is going to be great.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of these exhibitions. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't like that Logan Paul versus Floyd Mayweather was an exhibition. I would have loved to have heard what the judges actually thought of that fight because, you know, media and fans on the internet could say anything. They could say Logan Paul won that fight, which clearly he didn't do. But I mean, if you're not a boxing fan, it looked like he might have won that fight because Floyd sort of toyed with him and didn't really do much. But at the end of the day, these fights need to be pro fights. And Anderson Silva went in there and proved that he's a professional boxer. And if he does fight Roy Jones Jr., let's hope that it's not an exhibition. Let's hope that Roy Jones comes in there and wants to fight a pro fight, because what's the point in getting into the boxing ring other than money if you're not going to get your record up there a little more? And I think that Anderson Silva wants to do stuff to still prove that to himself at least and push that legacy going forward. You know what I mean?
All right. Now,
I think the only reason that some of these are labeled as exhibitions is because the commissions won't like let them count as professional fights. Like 0-1 professional boxer, even though he is like 6 whatever and almost 200 pounds fighting Floyd Mayweather, the greatest boxer of all time by some, who's 5'8", weighing in at like 156. Like, obviously there's a size disadvantage, but there's literally such an experience disadvantage that the commission could not feasibly
Yeah, I can see why they did the exhibitions, because, you know, when he fought Tension also, you know, that was an exhibition too. Floyd, I think Floyd knows what he's doing, and he's taking the fights and putting them under the rules that he wants to put them under, and then just labeling as an exhibition and making
what do you say
post
fight? He's robbing banks legally.
That's right, man. He's doing it. He's doing it now. Nick, there's a comment here about yesterday on your show, somebody was accusing me of something, right? So can you give us a recap of what happened?
Is this about the Bellator rankings?
Yes.
Okay, someone got really mad that they said you exploded at them on this show last week when they asked you about the Bellator rankings. And then we played the clip live. And I have to say, you didn't explode.
I did not explode.
You did
I
not
remember, yeah. I don't understand like why he thought I exploded on him. Like I did. It was confusing to me. It was very confusing.
Is this the comment you mean from Martin? Do you like the Bellator rankings?
Exactly, right? Because Martin was probably watching yesterday.
Yeah.
Right? And then
they just released a new one.
Did they? Did they just release the new
ones?
I don't
know.
You are on the panel, right?
Yes, I am on the panel of the Bellator rankings. But the thing is, like, he's asking me like details of the rankings, like why is this person ranked here? And I explained to him, like, I don't control the rankings. I just put in my rankings and then they do what they do with them, right? Like, I cannot explain to you like why someone is ranked here, right? I just put in my rankings, and that's what I did for like about a couple minutes, right? And I guess I exploded on him because Nick understands me. Like, he knows that if I explode, it's like 1 or 100 or 1,000. Like, if I explode, it's gonna be 1,000, right? I'm I don't really get bothered by things too much, right? I have my opinions and everything, but like this guy, Rain, you know what I mean? Like I don't think he was. I think he maybe chose his words wrong, right, about the exploding part. But the rankings, man, rankings are rankings. You know, we just use them as kind of like numbers. And when we want to use them to our advantage, when we're talking about something, we use it to our advantage, right? That's what it is. And the rankings stuff, every commission or not a commission, every promotion that has rankings, everybody's gonna like them and dislike them, hate it and love it whenever it's good for them, right? That's what it is. So that's rankings for you, right? So if you want me to explain anything about the rankings, I can't help you, man. And then Ryan Hall was released by the UFC. Like, is someone just trying to start like?
Yeah, I
Well,
see that
fake
nowhere.
news?
I'm trying to find that myself, but
Yeah,
I
I
don't
was
see it
having a look.
anywhere.
I can't
Nah,
see it.
man. Come on. Why would they do that? Why would
He
they
has a
release
fight
him?
lined up, doesn't he?
Yeah, he's fighting Aaliyah Tapuria.
Yeah, at 264.
Yeah. So, but
He's always
he's man.
got
He's
fight
been
like that.
like struck with a lot of bad luck though, right? Like,
Yeah.
you know, like
yeah.
injuries and just pulling out of fights and his opponents pulling out and stuff like that. So I did get to talk to him like 6 months ago or something when he was trying to angle a fight with the Korean Zombie. But other than that, nothing's really worked out for him. So yeah, so let's move on to the next thing. Like the next thing that I wanted to get into, let me see where my stuff is at. All right, so this right now, it's the middle of the year, right? It's June. Is it June?
We're in June.
June
Yeah, next
24th.
week
Yeah,
is
we're
July.
All right, so we're at the end of June, right? Now we're at the end of June. It's like the midway, a little bit past the midway point of the year, right? So I wanted to get you guys' thoughts on who you feel like will still be the UFC champion in December. You know what I mean? But I have designated weight classes for everybody. So we'll start with you, Nate, first, right? So could you put up the rankings, Nick? The UFC rankings?
Yes, sir.
Just go up there so we
I'm
kind of have
gonna
an
need to
idea.
grab my glasses so I can see the rankings.
All right, there you go. Get the vision right. All right, so I was thinking, you know, Jeremy, we'll get you from like flyweight all the way to, let's say, lightweight.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
And then Nate, you can focus on welterweight all the way to heavyweight. We'll start with the men first. All right, so you guys need some time to think about it, or should we just jump right into it?
Let's roll the dice, man.
All right, man. Jeremy, let's start with the flyweight division. Right now, sitting at the top, just recently won the belt, is Brandon Moreno. And we got Davison at number 1, Askarov. We got Pantoja, Perez. Who do you think is going to be the champion at the end of the year?
At the end of the year, I think we still see Brandon Moreno as the champ. He improved immensely from the time that he walked away from, didn't walk away, was let go from the UFC and then brought back in. And if the first fight didn't go his way, the way we saw that fight play out, this second one, I mean, holy crap. Davison had no answers. He barely even threw anything. And Brandon Moreno truly proved why he's the champion. He was shocked himself, I think, as much as the rest of us were watching that fight. I don't see anything else happening. I mean, we could see Davison get a rematch to see if they fight again, but he's probably only going to fight one more time this year. And I think whoever he fights, whether it's him or a rematch, I believe he's already fought Askarov, correct?
Mm-hmm.
I think he beats him too. I think that's who we see holding the belt, flyweight championship. He'll move into that pound for pound rankings as well if he wins that fight.
All right. Well, I'm gonna throw in a wrench right here, and I'm gonna say, if Pantoja gets to fight Moreno, he becomes the new champ. I'm just gonna throw that in.
Interesting.
He's already beat him twice. He beat him on Tough, and then he beat him in the UFC.
Exactly, man. Like, I'm a history buff, right?
3
Not
times
really.
a charm, you think, eh?
Yeah, 3 times a charm, right? He could get at the biggest stage, right? So we'll see. But Brandon Moreno's a completely different fighter from those 2 fights.
I'm really impressed. You know what? I actually like Brandon Royval as well. Not as the champion, but I think he's going to move up those rankings pretty quickly. He's a fun fighter in there, and I think he has a shot at beating almost any of these guys other than maybe Davison or Brandon Moreno.
Really quick, do you guys think now that Moreno's champion that there's any chance that Benavidez works his way back to a title shot?
Tough, man. I think it's tough.
And whoever he fights next is going to be really tough, right? Because
Yeah.
Benavidez is like clearly he's at the end of his prime, to where a lot of these guys are in the middle of their prime or at the start of their prime, which doesn't favor Benavidez in many of these matchups, right? And stylistically, some of these guys just I think that they would be able to go in there and beat up Benavidez. Like really, really, it's a really tough ask for Benavidez to climb back up. So
sure.
let's go to the welterweight. Let's slide down, Nick, to the welterweight, and we get to Nate's pick of who I think I know. I think I know.
You don't
who
have to scroll back down. Usman's gonna remain the champion. I think if he rematches Colby, I think he beats Colby worse than he beat him the first time. I think if he fights Leon, I think he beats Leon worse than he did the first time. Like, he's already the champion and a dominant champion, and he's getting better and better every fight. I just cannot imagine anyone right now in the welterweight division beating it. All
right. Who do you think, Jeremy, would be like the dark horse, like maybe stylistically?
I still think Gilbert Burns is is stylistically tough for him. I mean, Usman figured him out, but I think he does have the tools that could beat him. Mm-hmm. And Chiesa sort of slides in there a little bit too. It's tough with these jiu-jitsu guys, man, because if they can sort of play their game, which Usman's never let them do, then we'll see what happens. But Chiesa's got a tough fight ahead of him.
Chiesa is, to me, he's a hybrid of Damian Maia and John Fitch.
Oh, yeah.
And a lot of people are not going to like that style, but he's going to beat a lot of the guys in the top 10. But you're not going to like it. And it could lead to a title shot, but I think he has a huge advantage over John Fitch, because even though John Fitch did fight for the title, it took him a long time to get there. He is liked by the UFC. He does a lot of desk work for the UFC, which is an advantage, man.
And he's not boring either. You know what I mean? Like, John Fitch would get you up against the cage, drag you down, and still land some fists, but he wasn't the most exciting fighter. At least Michael Chiesa, when he drags you down, he's still beating you up. He's not just, ragdolling you around the cage and sort of leaving you there. I think Michael Chiesa is like you're saying, very tough for any of these top 10 guys. I think if he does make it to the top and he gets that title shot, it's a very interesting fight. But Usman is also way bigger than almost every person in the division, which makes him a tough challenge, man.
All right, let's slide back up to the bantamweight division. Right now, sitting on top is Aljo Sterling, right? He defeated Peter Yan for the title. Now, I'm hearing that we might see this rematch at the end of the year. Just some rumors that I'm hearing right now. What do you think, Jeremy?
The only reason I'd say Aljo stays the champ is if this belt doesn't get defended again this year. I think Peter Yan wins the title to take it back and put it around his waist. I think this division is so stacked. It's so much fun. Corey Sandhagen has shown some killer skills in there. I love Rob Font. He looked great. This division is a lot of fun, and it's so crazy that Jose Aldo is still ranked in the top 5.
And Nate, what about TJ Dillashaw factor in this bantamweight division? Do you think he's going to fight for the title?
Man, he has to get by Sandhagen first, and that's a very tough ask. Look, I think TJ Dillashaw has all the chances in the world of becoming champion again. I don't know. I am sure that if he gets past Sandhagen, he'll get the winner of Yan and Sterling. I'll say that.
I'm just going to throw this in there. The darkest of dark horses in that division is Merab. He's like Madonna. You just don't even have to say his last name. Merab, right? He's like Cher. He's the Cher of the bantamweight division, right? Like, he's just one name.
And he's got Moraes coming up, right?
Yeah, and I think that's like a really bad stylistic matchup for a lot of the guys, man. Merab is just like an empty, like endless gas tank, just incredible takedowns. Like, that's not fun for anybody, right? Especially a striker. So we'll see. Let's go down to the middleweight division. Nate, Israel Adesanya sits at the top, but we do got some good contenders, man.
Well, I think the middleweight belt's going to be probably defended one more time, and it's going to be between Izzy and Whitaker. And I know Whitaker's improved a lot, but I still don't think he has what it takes to beat Izzy at this point. So I would go with Izzy. I know Cannonier is fighting Kelvin Gastelum, and if he looks impressive, and if Izzy and Whitaker fight, like say September, they may be able to finish off the year with the title fight. I think Cannonier would have a size and strength advantage over Adesanya, but that would be an interesting look, I think. But I do still think that Adesanya keeps the belt through the year at the very least.
Yeah, Whitaker, he probably has the best chance of defeating Israel, right? But I feel like the guy that's like creeping up that would be somewhat of a problem would be Sean Strickland. I don't know why. I just feel like he's a guy that will march forward and not care like who Izzy is. Like he's not worried about the skill set. He'll march forward and just implement what he feels like should be implemented in the fight. And that could be dangerous for Izzy, right? If he's just overwhelmed in that way. But we need someone like a Merab at 185, right? Like we need a Merab 185 version, but we don't have that. Do we? Do you see anybody, Jeremy?
No, I don't think we do. You look down the rankings, and I mean, we have Omari Akhmedov, who, I don't know. Edmund is an interesting take. The guy that I think is the dark horse that could do well and has looked much more sophisticated inside the cage has been Uriah Hall. I don't think he'll get up there for a title shot in this calendar year. I think the Robert Whitaker versus Izzy fight will be a little different this time, because in that first fight when they fought, he was reaching, he was overextending, he wasn't, and that's the way he's fought prior to fighting Izzy. But in his fights after Izzy, we saw a much tighter, crisper Robert Whitaker, not the overextending, not the reaching, and that's how Izzy caught him, man. Izzy's a fantastic counterpuncher. I don't see Robert Whitaker winning it, but I see it playing out a little differently.
All right, let's go up to the featherweight division. We got Alexander Volkanovski, and right now they're in the middle of tough. So, Alex comes out, and there's some like beef between Volkanovski and Ortega. That fight's going to happen, hopefully, end of this year. Probably won't be another fight after that. So who do you see? Jeremy?
Yeah, I see. Yeah, if we're saying one more fight, or is it at the end of the year, this fight, or
yeah,
is that what they're saying? I thought maybe September, October. I'm not sure.
September. They're saying September, but then it could be pushed to October.
Okay, so if he does fight in September, theoretically he could have one more fight in this calendar year. So I say if he has one, he remains the champion. He beats Brian Ortega. If he has two and Max Holloway creeps back up there, that's a different story. We could see the belt back around Max Holloway's waist. But I'm going to say it's only once. So I'm going to say Alexander Volkanovski keeps the title. He's just that much more well-rounded. He may be losing every fight on The Ultimate Fighter this year with his fighters. And I've actually liked this season. It's been a fun one. The fighters are really good. Actually, Michael Chiesa was on this past week's episode in Alexander Volkanovski's sort of little camp there. But so it's going to be one of those seasons where Brian Ortega wins all the fights and then loses the fight against the champion.
Then, let's take Max out the equation, Nate, and who do you see that's like a guy that's could be up there at the beginning of next year, challenging, maybe winning the title?
I'd have to say I really hope this gets rebooked, that TKZ and Yair get a rematch in. I know Holloway just pulled out of his fight with Yair. And I know Giga Chikadze's wanting to get in that fight with Yair, which would be an absolute it'd be an absolutely fun fight. But I really want to see the Korean Zombie and Yair rematch. And then I think the winner of that fight would most likely get the next crack at Volkanovski. Assuming
I think that guy I think that guy ranked at number 6 is the toughest fight for any of these guys, man. Josh Emmett is a beast. His wrestling is on point, and his striking, the guy has some of the craziest knockout power we've seen inside the octagon. If he's able to creep up to the top, that is an interesting test.
He's just got to stay healthy. I feel like he gets hurt a decent amount.
Yeah.
But yeah,
that
just sort of makes people forget about him. But yeah, he has crazy knockout power.
Yeah, he has the most. I think he has the hardest hands, the heaviest hands
For sure.
in the division, dude. Like, you haven't seen the knockouts that he's been putting on in the past couple of years. Like, he's sparking guys. Like,
oh yeah, and the
out
craziest thing
cold.
is he's a wrestler, man.
Yeah,
Like, he's a wrestler who's got those hands. You know, Matt Hughes was a wrestler who came in there and took guys down and beat the shit out of them on the ground. This guy's a wrestler, and he can do it on the feet.
Yeah. I need to reach out to Josh Emmett, try to get an interview, man. Catch up with him, see what's going on. Now let's go to the light heavyweight division. Jan Blachowicz is sitting at top. He's about to fight Glover Teixeira, but they don't have an official date for that yet. But then you got Yuri Prohaska and Alexander Rakic. Those are, like, I think that 4 right there, that's a murderer's row right there. What do you think, Nate?
I think Jan beats Glover. I'll say that. But if Jan and Yuri fight before the end of the year, I think Yuri is the champion. I think that he is just such a wild man with just such crazy power and just so much creativity. The way he landed that spinning back elbow on Reyes is just absolutely one of the best knockouts, I think, in the history of the UFC, let alone knockout of the year. I think that he's got enough size and strength to fend off Blachowicz's grappling attempts. And I think that if they were to fight, I think that Prohaska ends up getting a late KO.
Now, you know, a lot of people feel like Prohaska is like this uncrowned champ right now, right? Jeremy, are you on that train?
I don't know, man. I haven't seen enough of him, to be honest with you. I like what I've seen. I think he, like Nate was saying there, he's creative, but I think that flurry and that aggression could be a detriment to his skills. Like, when he does flurry, if he doesn't land, you know, Reyes did catch him. Now, if Jan catches him, that's a different story. I don't see him being the uncrowned champion. I'd love to see him fight. Let me look at these rankings. I'd love to see Yuri fight Ankalaev, maybe. I don't know. I don't see Jan not being the champion for the next little while. He's definitely the champion by the end of the year.
All right. Now let's go to the lightweight division. Charles Oliveira sits at the helm, right, with the belt.
Yes.
And incredible performance. Then you got Poirier, Gaethje, Dariush. You know, they're still floating around. Who do you see? Who do you see fighting Oliveira at the end of the year? Because most likely
that's the tough question, right?
Yeah.
That's the tough question. Now, obviously, it's going to be the winner of Dustin Poirier, Conor McGregor. That's got to be the fight to make. They got to get the champion. If Conor McGregor wins that fight, I don't know if we do see him fight Charles Oliveira. That's where things come into play, right? Like, if Conor McGregor beats Dustin Poirier, do they make a money fight at either a different weight class, at the same weight class? Does he fight Nate Diaz? What happened? Like, the money fight could be the Conor McGregor fight. Charles Oliveira has proved everyone wrong and looked fantastic in every one of his fights for the last, don't even know how long, man. The guy's just that good. He's going to hold on to the belt for the foreseeable future. I actually, to be honest with you, can't see anyone in even the top 15 beating him.
Wow.
Yeah.
Nate, do you agree with that?
It's interesting. I need to. Can you scroll down a little bit and see what's beyond Ferguson? Yeah, I think the only people in the top 15 that outside of the top 4 or 5, I I think they all would have a decent shot, but I do agree with Jeremy. I think that they all lose to Oliveira. I think Islam Makhachev is absolutely underrated. I think that as the Khabib protege, I think there's a storyline there. If he were to, assuming he gets past Thiago Moises, I would love to see him eventually down the line fight Conor, but that seems like pretty far-fetched at this point. Just to sort of reignite the rivalry now that Khabib's retired. But I think that he can pose a threat to anybody sort of like Khabib. And then Brad Riddell has been sharp on the feet, and he has good enough takedown defense to utilize his kickboxing. And I think that he can stand and trade with anybody in the division. And I think he can, I mean, he hasn't lost in the UFC yet. And I think that he is a tough out for anybody in the lightweight division.
Brad Riddell, he kind of reminds me of Yuri Prohaska. Like just like the style of fights that they produce. It's just that Yuri finishes fights. Brad goes to decisions, right? Does Brad even have a finish in the UFC? I don't think so, right?
I don't think he does. That last fight, he could have finished that fight. At any point, it almost seemed like he could have finished that fight, but yeah.
And he almost got finished in the first round, right?
Exactly.
So he's just a wild man. Like Brad's a wild man. But I think like we haven't seen. Yeah.
I was going to say, I know the rankings would not necessarily support this, but I really want to see him and Gaethje throw down. That I think would just be barn burner.
They have barn burner matchup. Like Riddell should fight Ferguson next, to be honest with you. I think that they should toss him Ferguson next. You know, why not? He's ranked. Ferguson's on a losing streak. He needs to fight somebody, right? And you know what the UFC usually does? They like to build guys off of guys that are falling down. So let's get that matchup together.
Yeah, that either happens or they throw him like Gregor Gillespie or something.
Exactly, right? Somebody to build off of, right?
Yeah.
That's what they want to prove, or Ferguson proves that he's still one of the top guys and he beats one of the guys in the lower rankings. But I feel like, you know, like going back to what Nate was saying about Islam, if Islam spoke English and he was doing all these interviews throughout the years of just him bashing Conor, and like you could use clips of that, you know what I mean? I think that fight would be a possibility. Mm-hmm. But because Islam doesn't have that behind him, that it probably will never happen. It's just like there's no buildup. There's no interest of that, right? You can't just say like Khabib thinks you're the next champion and that's what everybody's going to ride off. You know what I mean? Like that doesn't make any sense. Like DC could say that a million times, but no one really cares, right? It's just like you got to do it. You have to do it yourself. You can't have someone else doing your bidding, right? Like it's like the mafia, right? If you want to do something, you got to go out there and do it. You got to get your hands dirty, right? And build your name. That's what you need. All right, let's go to the heavyweight division. Nate, you got Francis Ngannou, the man of steel, basically. So do you see anybody going in there? Do you see Lewis? Do you see Stipe? Do you see Jon Jones? Who do you see him fighting next at the end of the year? And do you see that person beating him?
I think the UFC's made it clear at this point that Derek Lewis is next for him. Obviously, if Jon Jones gets his stuff together and he's able to work something out with the UFC, I think he could still sneak his way back in and earn the title shot. But for the moment, I'm thinking Lewis is getting the title shot. And I know Derek Lewis beat Francis Ngannou in possibly the most boring fight of all time when we expected it to be just the most amazing fight. I think this rematch will actually live up to expectations. But I think the way Ngannou looked against Stipe, so much more technically crisp, and so much more composed. Seeing the way he knocked out Rosenstruik, just throwing windmills at his face until he fell down, going from that to, you know, the way he fought Stipe, throwing those crisp, straight punches. It shows how much he's improved, even in the course of that short amount of time. And I think that he beats Derek Lewis And I don't think that Jon Jones fights by the end of the year. If he does, I think that he may be given Stipe. Yeah, I think Ngannou remains the champ through the end of the year, at least.
When you look at the heavyweight division right now, there's a lot of young heavyweights coming up, and that's good for the UFC, right? Because usually heavyweights is filled with like older guys, but Rosenstrike, he's still a young heavyweight. I think he's like 30. And then you got Tom Aspinall, who's pretty young himself. You got Chris Dawkins. You got guys like that. You know what I mean? Like Tibura, he's not too old either. You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of young guys. Even Blades, I feel like he's still in his early 30s, right? So he has a bunch of years left. And
even Gane's Cyril Gane's like
yeah,
30,
he's very young
too.
Yeah, he's very young. If you scroll down, Nick, at number 14, the same guy's tied with himself, Lou. Like, what's going on with the rankings?
What is with that?
Sergey Spivak, there's two of them.
That's his biggest fight. He's gotta beat himself every time out.
He's got to beat the NFT version of himself, right? Like those are the used to do.
They spell it wrong as well originally. I saw somewhere.
Yeah, and then who's the other 14 guys? Sergey Pavlovich? I don't even know who that is.
He's not fought in a while. He debuted against Overeem and lost.
Oh yeah, I remember that. Yes, everyone smashed him, right? Like it was really
ground
one-sided.
and pound. It was
He spelled it wrong as well. Yeah,
I know. I think he may have beaten Tibura, or he has rebounded and gotten a couple of wins over some pretty decent opponents. So, yeah.
All right. Well, that's good, man. Hey, for the people that are like, oh, why didn't you do the women's round? I have another crew that's gonna come in. We're gonna talk about the women's champions, and we're probably gonna add the UFC with Bellator and talk about both sides, right? And who they believe will be champion. Just these guys are gonna focus on the men, right? So don't trip. Don't come and attack me for that. So anyways, yeah, man, we're at the end of the road. Just like Boys to Men. I actually watched there's a pretty good documentary series called like This Is Pop on Netflix. The first episode is good. It's Boys to Men and like their impact. If you're old as me, Boys to Men, like what they were like,
of course
how big they were. Oh, of course, Jeremy. But I'm just saying, like, yeah, it's the end of the road for the show. We're almost at the 90-minute mark. So, before we go, Nate, what I mean? Like, tell them, like, what can we expect from you, where we can see you, where we can follow you?
Yeah, so I just did a couple interviews with the people that are fighting on the Bellator card this weekend. I spoke with Tim Johnson, and I got an article out on him yesterday. And I spoke with Miles Jury. That's on the MMA Sucka website. MMA Sucka YouTube page. And then on Twitter, you can follow me at nfreeman.lwos. On Instagram, you can follow me on his name is Nate Freeman instead of Nate, though it's the letter N and the number 8. So N8 Freeman. Yeah, and I have Facebook if you want to add me on Facebook. Yeah, I'm just going to be probably covering PFL tomorrow. And then we'll see. I do a lot of event coverage for MMA Sucka, and I'm getting a lot more into these videos and interviews. I have been with MMA Sucka for a little over a year and a half at this point, and the past couple months I've just started doing interviews with some fighters and doing stuff like this. I'm really excited for. So just keep following me.
There you go, man. Follow him, man. Event coverage. Go to him. Go to MMA Sucka. And Jeremy, I heard you beat the brakes off James on the links. So.
Okay, don't go by what Eric Cal says there. He just wants to pay for our next round. It was fun. To be honest, I am not the greatest golfer. I'm not the best golfer. I'm not the worst golfer. I just like to get out there and have fun. I don't give a shit how I play. I hit the ball wrong every single time I hit it. Yeah. I always say, you can give me lessons all you want. You can teach me how to swing, but the next time I swing the club is going to be different than the time you taught me. So, but yeah, so James and I do we do monthly rounds with each other, which is pretty cool. Since we live so close, we went out to a course in his neck of the woods a couple weeks ago, and then played a course this past weekend, and we got one booked for July. So it's a lot of fun. We got to, we're talking that we got to do one down in Vegas once the borders open up, and get a whole bunch of media crew down there to play in Vegas and watch the UFC as well, which would be fun. But of course, I want to thank you guys for having me on. As always, I feel like part of the family now. Been on a few times. You can follow me on Twitter at JeremyBrand604, on Instagram at Jeremy_604. This weekend, we got a shit ton of results happening over at MMASucka.com. Cage Warriors has the trio of events this weekend. So we had Cage Warriors 123 today, 124 tomorrow, 125 on Saturday. And those are all being covered by Josh Ewell. As Nate said, he's covering PFL. We got Bellator tomorrow night. That has coverage, obviously, the UFC on Saturday, and then Submission Underground, which is the event that I'm looking forward to most on Sunday afternoon. Submission Underground 24 will likely have results for that. It's the absolute tournament to see who is going to face Mason Fowler next. But yeah, check us out, MMASucka.com, on Twitter at MMASucka, and on Instagram at MMA_Sucka. I believe I got everything out there.
Good, man. Good. Sounds good. Follow those guys, and SCMP MMA. Subscribe to this channel. Check out the interviews. We just did some. Nick did a beautiful interview with Angela Lee and her baby, and there's a lot of good conversation there. Go check out the Gilbert Burns interview that I did. There's a bunch more coming next week, in the following weeks. And next week we'll be back, same time, Thursday, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. I love everybody for joining us, and see you guys